Hello and welcome to Cleveland Classic Cinema. Tonight's film is 1939's Charlie Chan in Reno, directed by Norman Foster.
Well, Chan, I reckon you ain't here with Whitman for nothing.
Excellent observation.
Then we may as well understand each other right now. Me and King got this case well in hand, and we don't need no outside help or interference.
Don't mind him, Charlie. He's known as Tombstone. I guess you can figure out why.
Tombstones, often engraved with words of wisdom.
Now behave yourself.
I want a drink.
You've had too much to drink already, and you've talked too much. You used to be smart. You keep on like this, and you'll hang yourself.
What's the matter? Afraid you'll hang with me?
Doctor, one moment.
What are you giving her?
Adrenaline. She's got to have a heart stimulant.
Will take, please.
What's the matter, Mr. Chan? Have you gone mad?
Examination of hypodermic will determine that. Jimmy!
I should start this one out giving credit where it's due. I was casting about for movies to broadcast on the show, and while there are many, many public domain movies to show, the greater portion of them are, for the most part, garbage. There's a reason a lot of movies lapse into public domain status, and that is because when the Dream Factory, as Hollywood used to be referred to, was going full blast, it was very much like a factory. The studios cranked out movies like Link Sausages. There were literally thousands of movie theaters and later drive-ins across the world, and they needed product. Whether the product was of quality was secondary to filling the demand, and there were so many movies made to meet that demand that quality went out the window. At the first advent of 3D, one theater owner exclaimed of the audience, "They'll wear toilet seats around their necks if you give them what they want." As it turns out, that wasn't quite true. Once the novelty of 3D wore off, the people stayed away in droves. I can only hope that happens with the current vogue of 3D movies. I've seen quite a few good films in 3D that didn't benefit from the process. For example, The Avengers: Age of Ultron. Yeah, it was interesting at first, but after a while you just forgot that it was in 3D, and watching it flat would have been just as good. The only recent movie I've seen in 3D that used the process properly, that is, it enhanced the visuals throughout the entire film instead of just being interesting in a few scenes, was Pixar's Up, and it was thrilling. Getting back to giving credit where it's due, as I said, I was casting about for new movies when my very good friend Darren lent me his Charlie Chan collection. 36 movies on 8 discs. I was watching them when the idea occurred to me that I could get 3 shows out of them, since the title character was played by 3 different actors with 3 different styles of interpretation. The history of the character is so rich and fascinating that by doing 3 shows I could cover it completely without subjecting my viewers to interminable intros. I also have to thank another very good friend of mine, Scott, for loaning me the book from which I gleaned all of the information I'm about to impart, Charlie Chan, The Untold History of the Honorable Detective and His Rendezvous with American History, by Yun-Tae Huang. Okay, now that the credit has been properly distributed, let's get started. This time, I'm going to tell you the story of the man upon which Charlie Chan was loosely based, a Chinese-American detective for the Honolulu Police Force, Chang Apana. Chang Apana was born Ah-Pung Chang on December 26, 1871 in Waipio, Hawaii. This date is open to debate, however. Although his records indicate that this is the true date of birth, it is estimated that the actual year could have been 1869, 1864, or 1870. At the age of 3, he and his parents returned to Canton, China, his parents' birthplace. The region was devastated by the Opium Wars and the Taiping Rebellion, as well as various feuds between towns. The poverty was horrible. Some families turned to cannibalism just to keep from starving to death. Ah Peng's parents decided that their son stood a better chance of living a real life back in Hawaii, so when he was 10, he was sent back to the islands with his uncle. When they arrived, they were shipped off to work on a plantation. What happened to Ah Peng in the next 10 years is pretty sketchy. All that's known for sure is that he learned how to handle horses, which were new to Hawaii, and that he became a stableman for the wealthy Wilder family in Honolulu. He excelled at handling and training horses, soon earning the title of Paniolo, or Hawaiian cowboy. Cattle had been introduced to the islands only a decade earlier than horses and had multiplied and overrun the islands to a point where they were becoming a major problem for the natives. Paniolos were in high demand. Ranch work was then, like it is now, hard work, and Changapana, now working under the name he adopted once he got settled in Hawaii, took to it well. He was described as dark and sinewy, like a bull, and always wore a cowboy hat and carried a bull whip that he himself had fashioned from the hide of slaughtered cows. In addition to working with the animals, Apana was also employed as a chef at the Wilder Ranch. He became very close to the family, and they gave him a lot of help. There was a very prevalent prejudice concerning the Chinese in the country at that time, and Apana went to work for Helen Wilder, who had been deputized by the Marshal of the Republic of Hawaii to enforce animal cruelty laws as the first humane officer in Hawaii. This wasn't an easy job for a Chinaman. The Chinese believe in reincarnation, but in the Buddhist belief, there is no guarantee that the body you occupy in the next life will be that of a human. If you've done something evil in this life, then the body you possess in the next life may be that of a dog, pig, horse, or other animal that belongs to a lower rung on the species ladder as atonement for your depredations. It's not known if Apana held this belief, but it certainly put him at odds with the Chinese community. This, and the fact that Apana didn't wear a queue, the traditional Chinese pigtail, set him even farther apart from his fellow countrymen. In addition to protecting animals, he also looked out for the children of his beat, who were often treated as badly as the animals. He was a strict but not unfair man, and if he could settle a dispute without resorting to using his whip or prosecution, he would do so. He earned the admiration and respect of the people he served, and everyone knew that you did not mess with Chang Apana. In 1898, Hawaii was annexed by the United States when the country went to war against Spain. When the ceremony transferring sovereignty was held, Apana, as a native-born Hawaiian, was granted citizenship and he joined the Honolulu Police Department. His first beat was Hawaii's Chinatown. At the time this movie was made, and way before that, the name Chinatown in general conjured up images of dark alleys, opium dens, secret passages, and sailors being shanghaied. The yellow peril way of thinking permeated the country, and, as all stereotypes are based on truth, albeit exaggerated, some of the fears that generated this outlook were fact. Gambling was usually the biggest business in various Chinatowns across the country, and it was an absolute epidemic in Hawaii. Apana found it necessary to adopt disguises in order to gather information needed for arrests, and his favorite disguise was as a sea yup man, a vendor who carried his wares in buckets suspended from a yoke. In this disguise, he was able to penetrate the gambling and opium dens and make his arrests. Apana was well known in Chinatown, and once he broke out his much-feared whip, everybody usually came along quietly. That wasn't always the case, however. There were many attempts on his life, but Apana survived them all. In the early 1910s, Apana joined the crime-busting squad. This was a collection of extremely tough detectives who would cruise around town in a black Packard, which was equipped with a special switch that allowed the driver to open all 4 doors at the same time, so the squad could all jump out at one time and leap into action. Apana began to participate in murder investigations at this time, and this was supposedly when Earl Dare Biggers, the creator of Charlie Chan, first learned of him through a story in the Honolulu papers he was reading while doing research for an upcoming book. While the tale may be apocryphal, when the author met Apana on a trip to Hawaii, Biggers said, If Charlie Chan must have an original, he could not have a better one. In 1932, after the controversial Massey case, an overhaul of the Honolulu Police Department was called for and a new commissioner was appointed. Part of the new regime was the installation of many new rules and procedures which many of the officers hired before 1932 found either too confusing or too binding, so they either retired and took a pension, transferred, or resigned. Chanapana was offered a pension but took it as an insult. What for do I want a pension? What would I do if I was not a policeman? Soon after, he was involved in an automobile accident and suffered a fractured collarbone. This forced him to reconsider his position, and he retired that May. His pension was 50% of his regular salary, but the people he had served so well and faithfully felt that that was unjust. 3 prominent white businessmen offered to make up the difference in Apana's pension for the rest of his life in tribute to his service. In late 1933, he developed an infection in his leg, which was worsened by his diabetes. Changapana died on December 8th of that year. Okay, let's talk about tonight's movie. The plot is as follows. Someone gets murdered, a friend or a friend of Charlie Chan is accused, and Charlie comes in and saves the day. This is the plot of every Charlie Chan movie made after 20th Century Fox began making them, and it amazes me how many directions they found to take that self-same plot. Be that as it may, the Charlie Chan movies are consistently entertaining, and it's because of the character of Charlie Chan himself. Sidney Toler, who portrays Chan in this movie, made more of them than either Warner Roland or Roland Winters, and he really locked the character in perfectly. Whether he was being polite and watchful or cracking on his number 2 son for his antics, he was perfect. Sidney Toler was born on April 28, 1874 in Warrensburg, Missouri. The son of a horse breeder, he made his first stage appearance at the age of 7 years old, and by the 1890s was a firmly established stage star. He was also a writer, director, and producer, and he had an excellent singing voice, resulting in his taking the job as lead baritone for the Orpheum Theater's stock opera company. Toler starred in Broadway productions for David Belasco before moving to Hollywood and entering pictures. He played supporting roles as a freelance actor before being put under contract by 20th Century Fox in the mid-30s. After Warner Oland died, the studio was looking for a new Charlie, and he won the role after auditioning with 34 other actors. Toler's Chan was a bit sharper than Oland's, being more sarcastic while still keeping his humble persona. He's very witty in the films, and it adds to the enjoyment that much more. His first film as Chan was Charlie Chan in Honolulu, and he made 22 more films as the character. When World War II started and the overseas markets dried up, the studio put the series on hiatus and ended up selling the rights to Monogram Studios, one of the more recognizable of the Poverty Row companies. Although the quality of the series was in decline during its last years of the 20th century, it really took a dip when it went to Monogram. Toler did 11 more films at the studio, the last 3 in a single year. He began to tire of the role by this time, and his performances were rather rote, but still entertaining. In addition, Toler was suffering from cancer at this time, and this resulted in more screen time for number 2 son and his chauffeur Birmingham Brown, played by Victor Sen Yung and Mantan Moreland, respectively. Sidney Toler died from intestinal cancer on February 12, 1947, in Beverly Hills, Los Angeles, California. Victor Sen Yung was born Sen Yung on October 15, 1918, in San Francisco, California. After his mother died in an influenza epidemic in 1919, his father put Young and his sister into a children's shelter and moved back to China. After remarrying, he returned to the States and got his children back, and after teaching them Chinese, Young got a job as a houseboy at age 11 to help with the family expenses. He managed to make enough to attend college and earn a degree in economics. After moving to Los Angeles to put in some postgraduate work, he entered acting by acquiring bit parts and extra work while also working as a chemical salesman. He was at 20th Century Studios in that position, trying to hawk a flame-resistant compound his company came up with when one of the techs he was making the pitch to suggested he stop by the casting office. This was right after Warner Oland had passed away and the whole Charlie Chan cast was being revamped. Sidney Toler, who had cast approval, selected Young to play number 2 son Jimmy after seeing his screen test. Other than the role of Jimmy Chan, however, Yung never really got any good parts at that time. He was cast in sometimes villainous roles in several movies, but his acting career was interrupted by a stint in the Army Air Force during World War II as captain of intelligence. When he returned, he went back to playing Jimmy Chan, although his character underwent a name change when Roland Winters took over the role of Charlie. He was now Tommy Chan. Yung enjoyed very few roles of any notoriety and went into television in the 1950s, appearing on Bachelor Father and as Hop Sing, the Cartwright's Chinese cook on Bonanza. He appeared in several episodes of Kung Fu along with number one son, Key Luke, and worked with some steadiness, making guest appearances on Here's Lucy, Get Smart, and Hawaii Five-0. In 1974, he published The Great Walk Cookbook and was working on a follow-up when he accidentally died of asphyxiation while sleeping after turning on a faulty gas stove for heat. He was 75 years old. George Slim Somerville was born on July 10, 1892 in Albuquerque, New Mexico. He appeared in 217 shorts and features during his career as an actor and directed 67 shorts between 1920 and 1930. Somerville ran away from home when he was young and bummed around for a while before he met movie producer Max Sennett through his friend Edgar Kennedy and got into movies. He was one of the original Keystone Cops and became a member of Sennett's stock company. He starred in his own series of shorts for Sennett and eventually became a director, helming a number of short films for both Universal and Fox Studios before he began acting with the advent of sound. He appeared in a good number of films, both dramas and comedies, appearing in support of Zazu Pitts and as a sidekick for Hoot Gibson. As you can see from tonight's movie, he was an excellent supporting actor and never lacked for work. Slim Somerville died from a stroke on January 5th, 1946, at the age of 53. Charlie Chan in Reno, while not what I'd call an excellent movie, is nonetheless a very good one. It's a workmanlike feature, granted, but it is consistently entertaining and never boring for a moment. And as I like to point out, the cardinal sin a film can commit is being dull. The support from Slim Somerville is excellent. The second you see him on screen, you know exactly what his character is going to act like, and it's a lot of fun watching him get cut down to size by Chan. And the whodunit aspects of the movie will keep you guessing until the end. So right now, sit back, relax, and enjoy Charlie Chan in Reno, right here on Cleveland Classic Cinema.